Hi, Henrik Knudsen. I would like to give you a little more in-depth understanding of the JTI typologies. As spoken previously, we have four dimensions that we focus on, and I've picked four slides from each dimension. So feel free to browse through the other slides, stop at them and reflect on them, perhaps write down some questions. So please, when you're finished, write down some questions, but also place yourself from the top of the mind. Where do you see yourself in each of these dimensions? And be attentive to whether it's only slightly, if it's moderate, or if it's quite a lot. So take your time, enjoy it, and reflect on the four dimensions. Place yourself, plus write down some questions. Okay, let's go for slide number 2. And this is the extrovert and the introverts. Extroverts, they like this stimulation from the environment, whereas introverts prefer stimulation from their inner world of thoughts and reflections. And we use all the attitudes ourselves, but we have our preference to the one or the other. I know we use them differently during the day, during the week, but it all boils down to that given free choice, we have our preferred and better developed areas. And there's a few comments here. Just pause it when you get to the individual slides and reflect on what each slide tries to convey. So some key words to the extroverts is they're very outward, like talking with people, they're very expressive, whereas introverts, they're much more reflective and reserved and get some energy from being with a few people. What can I say to this? I would like to say, actually, in the population as such, we're 50% extroverts and we're 50% introverts. And taking that, reflect on yourself, look at the slides, and then place yourself as slightly introvert, moderate or strong, or slightly extrovert, moderate or strong. Let's move on to the next dimension, the S and the N. Sensing and intuition. Initially, the sensors, they use very literally the five senses. What do they see? What do they hear? What do they feel? Touching, not what they feel emotionally, but what do they touch? What do they taste? What do they smell? So they're very keen on using their senses. Intuitions ends, they process information. There's more a sixth sense or a hunch. So the senses would look at the specific parts and pieces, whereas the intuitions look at patterns and relationships. Relationships not understood as interpersonal, but combinations, how things can be combined in a more overall. So the senses, they like things that are definite and more measurable. Actually quite typical, most engineers are more sensing, so that's why they are engineers, they define and measure, whereas intuitions, they like opportunities to be open, inventive, never quite know which direction they're taking, which this situation for sensing would be very frustrating, and this situation for an intuition type, a strong intuition, would be very confining, and it wouldn't give them space to think or move. Yep, framework, attentive to that, and uncomfortable with frameworks. Very much for procedures and working with them, where the intuits much more prefer variation and change. There's none of these that are correct or better. It's just there are different situations and different typologies that have their preferences. So here we have some of the keywords. S's, they have they're good at seeing the detail, the present, the practical, what's factually there, directions. Whereas N's more see patterns, they're more see future than what actually is there at the certain time and moment, and seeks variety. And again, these can be slight, moderate, or strong. So take your time, look through the slides, and place yourself on this dimension, whether on the S side, slightly moderate, slight, on the N side, slightly moderate, or strong. Next dimension, T and F. So this is the second of the mental functions, where the S and the N, as I expressed previously, is more a radar. Then this part, the T and the F, is a processor that determines the way you make decisions. So the T's, they often make decisions that are based on logic and objective considerations, whereas F's, they make decisions on the basis of more personal and more subjective values. So the T's decide with the head, and the F's are more decide with the heart, using logic or personal conviction. It's also quite characteristic that T's are much more capable of seeing things as an onlooker from outside the situation, whereas F's, they much more can feel themselves as part of a certain situation. Again, just pause the slideshow and stop at the ones that you find most interesting. So the key words here is that the T's, they're objective, justice, analyze, very precise. What are the principles within this? What is the rules that are laid out? Sorry. And F's, they're much more feeling. What do they feel? What is subjective? Trying to create harmony, much more personal in their approach, which leads can either be again slight, moderate, or strong, leading us to the next, which is the J and the P dimension, which is more the way that we prefer to live our daily life. And the J's, they like a planned and orderly lifestyle, whereas P's, they prefer a much more unplanned. Excuse me, I give you an example with a couple with the one part is a G and the other part is a P, and they decide to have friends for dinner on the Friday. Already on the Tuesday, the J would like to have it planned and ordered, and what's for the meal, etc. The details for the meal, whereas the P would say, it's Friday, the guests are coming, so let's find out Thursday night or even Friday, depending on where they are on the continuum between the G and the P. So J's prefer the ordered, P's prefer the more flexible. It's quite characteristic for them concerning deadlines. J's is the more manifested is that they're J, the more they are to meet deadlines and not be frustrated, whereas P's, they're quite often in a last minute rush. Again, with the structure and compared to regulations. And this is some of the words where they differ, and unwillingly start making things difficult for each other instead of understanding there is these different personality preferences. And I would like you to acknowledge that, and we'll be moving on to what these preferences have of which implications this has for the way that the two, not just these two types, but how the different typologies work with innovation. I like this one. This is quite characteristic. And some of the key words: structure, decisive, closure, meeting the deadlines, planning, and whereas the P's are much more on the flexible, curious, spontaneous, open, let's wait and see, and again, strong, moderate, slight. So have a look, consider yourself, where are you, and we'll be taking the test and we'll be putting you on the 4 dimensions. But prior to getting the feedback, I would like you to consider, where is it actually that you see yourself? That brings us to the end. Thank you.